Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. This is Lynn Cullen's producer, Celine Roberts, still taking over introducing duties today. Today we'll be hearing from Lynn's sister Susan, as it is a Tuesday, which means it is a Sue's Day. And here is Lynn Cullen.
Da-da, da-da. Susan, you there?
Not yet.
Suze.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello?
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 You can hear me, right?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Because when you said hello the third time, that's a little unsettling. You gave Celine a little fit. So, Susan.
I can't tell if you're hearing me or not. What?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm going to say what I always say. I don't know where the hell to start. Let's start with the name of this poor girl who's going to go to jail. Reality winner.
I kept wondering whether this was who this was. Whether this was a company name or if this is really her name.
That's her name. Her mother named her Reality. And her last name is Winner.
Shows?
No, I don't. Listen, what do I know? I don't know. Reality Winner. She's the poor soul who's going to go to jail for some
Of course,
time.
they had to find a girl. Of all the gazillion people, they had to find a girl.
Well, I don't think they were looking for a girl. She did something particularly stupid in not bothering to cover up her
tracks.
No, to cover her tracks at all. But I do want to say this, because what she leaked was something that I am not aware that we, the people, knew about. And as it turns out, our government knew about it since May 5th, if not before. That's when the report came out. And this report describes how the Russians, how their military intelligence unit hacked a company that sells voter software to various municipalities and states. So this is...
who's heard anything about that?
Okay, I had not. So
Me either.
This is a Russian military intelligence unit. And they do know that the company that got hacked, and they say the hack was successful, does sell its products in California, Florida, Illinois, Indiana, New York, North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia. So certain people who are voting in those jurisdictions might have some reason for concern about whether or not their votes were counted. And then she also leaked that a few days before the election, another Russian military intelligence hacker went into 122 local election officials' computers. And these were people who had the software from the system. And as it says here, the attack was likely successful, according to the report. So, here's
Right. Well,
what I want to know.
We should overturn an election.
Here's what I want to know. She will be charged because releasing, and here I'm quoting the Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, releasing classified material without authorization, which is what she did, threatens our nation's security and undermines public faith in government. Well, I just want to say to that what undermines my faith in government is knowing that my government is keeping from me the fact that our election system has been jeopardized, and keeping from me, a citizen, information that I, in fact, have a right to know. So I think Reality here is a hero. This is somebody who has given us information we damn well should have known in the first place. And here is, I want to find a thing that they say she admitted to. This just makes me nuts. So they got her, they arrested her on Saturday, even though the news just broke yesterday. She's been in jail since Saturday. They are arguing that she needs to stay in jail until they convict her and then send her to jail for God knows how long, right? Even though, of course, she's a danger to absolutely nobody. But they questioned her. The FBI got her at her home in Augusta, Georgia. She's 25 years old, by the way. And she admitted that she removed classified intelligence from her office, retained it, and mailed it to a news outlet. And she also acknowledged, listen to this, here's what they're acknowledging. She acknowledged that she knew the contents of the reporting could be used to the injury of the United States and to the advantage of a foreign nation.
No, but that's not true.
It's exactly the opposite. They are going, what do you mean?
It's exactly the opposite.
It's exactly the opposite. What she has leaked is going to be to the disadvantage of the friggin' Russians and to the advantage of the American people who have every right to know it.
Her attorney will say that. I'm sure her attorney will say that.
Well,
and bring up some whistleblower stuff.
She's going to jail,
and I want to know whether oh yeah, she'll go to jail. Well,
the Espionage Act is what it is, but the reality is that reality winner, age 25, gave us more information that we need to know, and in doing so, she was helping us and harming nations that would do us ill. The world is upside down.
So her attorney will argue.
Well, I can't stand it anymore. Okay, here's another indication that the world is upside down. The Wall Street Journal. Lead editorial. I'm just going to read you snippets. First of all, words like reckless. They are referring to the President of the United States of America, who they wanted in office. Now that he is...
Do we have a mea culpa for their endorsement?
No, there never is. There never is. But here's what they're saying. They say this, that world leaders who stoop to attack municipal politicians in foreign cities that have just been attacked look small. Not that we can recall a precedent. Yeah. So, this really is, of all the things he's done, this is the one that is so cringifying. It's mind-boggling. What he said about the London mayor. Beyond belief. And supposedly he's going over there, next month or something?
Well, the London mayor said as far as he was concerned, he would be happy for him to cancel the visit.
Well, he won't cancel, but I got to tell, he should cancel.
No, but, right, and he made a very strong statement that, that Trump I think he said, if you have good friends who are behaving badly, a good friend tells them, and this guy behaves badly.
Well, if Trump does go to London, I cannot imagine the reception he will have. My understanding is I read a little item that said, I guess Tillerson is over in Australia trying to calm the ruffled feathers of that ally. And as he was, his motorcade was going down a street, people on the sidewalks were using their hands. They weren't shouting. They were either doing a thumbs down as he went by, or they were doing a middle finger. That is the response. That is the response that our Secretary of State was getting in Australia.
Good.
Okay, more Wall Street Journal. Amazingly, the United States Commander-in-Chief also has better use of his time than making himself look foolish.
No, he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
That's the point. That's the whole point. He can't conceive of any better use of his time because the man is not up to the job. I mean, any sort of cogent, looking at this president in any sort of cogent way, you simply have to determine that this is a terrible mistake. He should not be there. And no, he's not up to the job. He's not going to do anything right. It's not going to get any better.
Did you see in the tweet storm yesterday? One of the tweets was this: Dems, Democrats, are taking forever to approve my people. They are nothing but obstructionists, all caps. Want approvals.
For whom? He hasn't put anybody up.
That's the thing. How dare he?
He hasn't even.
There's nobody to approve.
He hasn't offered prosecutors. He hasn't offered State Department appointees. He hasn't offered anything.
No, he hasn't made any of these nominations.
No, but all of his people will take that as, oh, yes, he has, and it's the Democrats that aren't. And never mind that they don't hold a majority of the House, and these are majority approvals.
Yeah. Well, you will recall that the minute they came in, they fired all of the United States attorneys. Now, let's make clear, again, what a U.S. attorney does. It's an extremely high-level and important prosecutorial position. And they are on the front lines of bringing terrorism cases, number one.
They are our federal crime fighters. They are the judicial branch of our federal crime
They
fighters.
deal with drug trafficking, all federal crimes, gang activity, all the stuff that the candidate, Trump, said he was going to be a law and order president. He's a law and order president with not one U.S. attorney. Not one. He has not replaced in 3 or 4 months, it is now, one U.S. attorney. He has not nominated one. We actually have a government that is empty on top levels, in the middle levels where people do work. It is rudderless, it is leaderless, and he tweets that the Democrats are somehow responsible when, as you say, they don't control. His party controls the Congress. Even if he did send a nominee up.
He had done it. Yeah. Even if he had, they couldn't. They're powerless.
And let's recall, he fired the head of the FBI. Has he put forward anybody to replace him? No.
Well, in his defense,
no one wants the job.
Will.
I know.
Nobody wants the job. Everybody bows out. And, and don't forget that the high-profile firing of the federal prosecutor, the United States prosecutor in New York, who he had explicitly said he wanted to keep him until the guy started looking at Trump, and he was gone like 30 seconds later.
Well, here's who also has no leadership. The Justice Department's criminal division, there's no one in charge. The civil division, there's no one in charge. The National Security Division. Now, when I say no one in charge, obviously whoever was second to the people he threw out have stepped up and are supposedly acting in that capacity. But these are positions that require the Senate to give its consent. Right. So these acting heads can do very, very little. They have not been nominated. They have not been consented to. So they're just sort of holding the place until somebody is brought in. We do not have a functioning government.
Well, that was one of his campaign promises, make government smaller.
Wall Street Journal again. Wall Street Journal. If this pattern continues, Mr. Trump may find himself running an administration with no one but his family and the Breitbart staff. People of talent and integrity won't work for a boss who undermines them in public without thinking about the consequences. And whatever happened to that old saw, the buck stops here.
No. In this administration, the buck stops over there.
Anywhere but here. So,
anywhere but there.
Yeah. It's really something, really something. And then you have, this second, the guy who, after he got rid of all the ambassadors, that's the other thing he did. He got rid of all the ambassadors. So the United States has no representation in any country in the world.
Which, by the way, I mean, our embassies, this is the State Department now, are totally understaffed. And ask yourselves why we have those places in place. If you're an American tourist and something bad happens to you, you go to the embassy. And they are there for you, except that, no, they aren't. There's nobody at home right now.
You've got the staff there. So there is staff there. There's no leadership in any of these embassies. And so, for instance, take a slightly important country on the world stage like China. China is one of the few places where he actually has nominated somebody. And that somebody has, I believe, already been approved. And although I'm not sure about that, and he's being trained, because he's not somebody who's ever been a diplomat before. He's the former governor of Iowa, Terry Branstad. And yes, he was confirmed last month, but he's not in place. So he's got to be learning about China, which is more than the president has bothered to do. So our Chinese embassy has been being run by a guy who has been with the State Department for 27 years, a guy named David Rank. And he has been the guy who sort of kept things running while awaiting a real ambassador. And he did something that blew away the State Department yesterday, because this rarely happens. He resigned. So now there's nobody there. He resigned, and he resigned because he could not perform the function that he had to, which was, I guess, notifying the Chinese in a official capacity that the United States had withdrawn from the Paris Climate Agreement. That was something that, as the acting ambassador, was his job, to officially bring that information to the Chinese government, who, of course, already know that we did. I know. There's no reason they don't know.
Right. They can read the papers, too. Right.
But he did not want to deliver that information.
To associate himself with
He did not. He could not. This is a guy who's been there forever, has served Republicans, Democrats. That's one thing, the State Department, they serve anybody. They are not political. But see, Trump is changing that. And he called his staff together, and he said that as a parent, as a patriot, and as a Christian, I cannot in good conscience play a role in implementing this presidential decision. As a parent, as a patriot, and as a Christian. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what I've been suggesting has been in short supply. That is a profile in courage. That is somebody leaving his career because he cannot in good conscience do what he is asked to do.
Right. He will not do something so dishonorable as his president is asking. And by the way, it's what we expected of Germans after the World War II. How could you allow this to happen? How could you turn your face? How could you not speak up?
Well, yeah, that question now we're all getting answered in real time because we can see how it happens very easily, how it happens. By the way, while staying with the Secretary of State here, Rex Tillerson, who has, again, there is nobody under him. He is relying on, here's a guy who was the CEO of Exxon, hardly a diplomatic position. He now is in charge of an agency that is at sea. He does not talk to any of the people in the agency, famously, will not talk to the media either. He apparently has 2 trusted aides. That's all he's dealing with are 2 people. And listen to the latest thing he did just to kick a few people in the teeth. He has broken with a nearly 2 decades-long bipartisan tradition of hosting an event for the State Department commemorating the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Since 1999, his 5 Republican, so Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, John Kerry, name the names, all have done this.
Hillary Clinton?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, her. They have all hosted a dinner to break the fast at some point during Ramadan. He declined. He was told this is what they do, and he said, nah. What do these people think? And that's, if he's heading the diplomatic, any diplomat would say, well, of course we would do that. There is nothing in it for us to create bad feeling. I'm sure there are a lot of Muslims who work in the State Department. Can you imagine the slap in the face this is for them? It's just unbelievable. These guys are really good at destroying everything. Destroying our nation's reputation, destroying our institutions, our agencies. And I came upon a great quote by a great old-time pal back in the day, long before most of you guys were paying any attention. His name was Sam Rayburn. He was a Texan. And he was he was the Speaker of the House. Just great old character. And he said this, and man, I send this wonderful Rayburn quote out to all the people who think Donald Trump was a great idea, and to all those who continue to aid and abet him. Here it is. A jackass can kick down a barn, but it takes a carpenter to build one. There it is. Anybody can destroy stuff. A 3-year-old can kick over, some gorgeous sculpture. Anybody can destroy stuff. Building something. That takes ability. God. A jackass.
Oh, but his name's on all of these buildings. When?
Well, yes, that's true. And his coat of arms is on those buildings, too.
Yeah.
Have you heard about his coat of arms?
Sure.
His coat of arms, it has 3 lions on it, 2 chevrons on a shield with a gloved hand gripping an arrow. Actually, he stole it from Marjorie Merriweather Post, who built Mar-a-Lago. That was her house.
Right.
right?
Right.
She was married to a Brit named Joseph Edward Davies. That was his family's coat of arms. So I guess Trump thought, well, Post, I got her house. She's married to this guy. There's this, coat of arms. I kind of like it. Something he didn't like on it, there was this Latin word on the bottom that said integritas.
Oh, well, got to get rid of that.
Integrity, right. That's what was on it. Integritas. Susan, he got rid of that. That's the only change he made to it. And what do you think he replaced integritas with?
Greedium?
Greedium. No, the only thing he ever puts on anything. It just says Trump. And this thing is on all his golf courses. It's on flags that fly at his golf courses. The stolen Trump coat of arms. Now, the only golf course it does not fly at is the one in Scotland. Because the British have refused. The British said, you can't fly that coat. It means something to them. They know, first of all, it's stolen and it's been defaced. They said, you can't fly that here. We got a family here that belongs to. So that's the only golf course. It's the only golf course that is. So, guys, I just wanted to I want to tell you that, like, those last few things that I've shared with you come from a weekly publication, strangely called The Week. It is a aggregation of all kinds of stuff that have appeared in other publications the previous week. And I am a voracious reader, as you know, and generally everything that's in the week I've seen already by the time I get the week. But there's these little things, and you know what else is in there? The other side.
What?
The other side. They aggregate.
Yeah.
So in talking about any story, they tell you what the Wall Street Journal said. They tell you what, the Washington Post said. They'll tell you what I'm trying to think of a right-wing newspaper now. They really don't even exist. But they do mix it up. So for those of us in a bubble, which is most Americans now, I do recommend this publication. It's a way of inadvertently finding yourself looking at a little piece of how the other half is reporting a story or how they're focusing on it. And in that regard, as I was looking at it last night, I was thinking, this is one of the few ways that because I avoid Fox News. I don't listen to conservative talk. I mean, why would I? I got enough stress in my life. But this is, I think the week is fantastic for all kinds of stuff. And
well, but even the mainstream news had Pence all over Sunday lying his face off, and which is all touting the 50,000 new jobs in coal that they've been responsible for.
I don't think that's Pence. I think that's Pruitt.
Oh, it was Pruitt, right?
The EPA head, who was saying that they have created 50,000 new coal jobs. It is absolute bullshit. And somewhere today I read a really good article saying how they have no idea how he got to that number. Although if you go back into the Obama administration and scarf up a few there, also if you don't just do coal, but you go to mining jobs.
Yeah, that's what he did. He when he remembered to do it, a couple of times he didn't remember to do it, but when he remembered to do it, he said gain in coal and mining and coal and mining. And in fact, in coal, there's been 4,000 jobs added.
Not 50. First of all, somebody
Nothing.
said
Not even
when they
close.
saw 50,000 jobs, they go, what? In mining? Coal mining? Because that's
There are
about all there
50,000
are.
jobs in
There's
total.
about, you know, they're not that's just not a growing industry anymore, and everybody knows it. God.
No, everybody doesn't know it. That's the point. Even the people that work in it will deny it.
What do you mean?
I'm just saying, if it's what you want to believe, it's what you believe.
Barbara says...
The only reality we have has just been arrested and thrown in jail.
Uh-huh. Barbara says, I just tuned in. Did you mention this? And then she sent me the Wall Street Journal editorial I've shared with you. So, Barbara, yes. I'm on top of it, babe. Don't worry about that. Okay, we need a little something beyond. So, Susan and I often make fun of all this nonsense going on now with, I'm sorry if I'm calling it nonsense, with all the sexual definitions that I can't keep track of.
Yeah.
Except that I know I'm a cis white female, which is like so out of fashion.
Right. We are both cis whites. Yeah.
I know. Boring.
Cis white females.
Boring. So I found a definition that I can do that makes me sound more interesting. And I can do it. Sapiosexual. Yes, sapiosexual. And in fact, it's one of the things you can, if you're like on OkCupid, you that's something you could say. I, by the way, am a sapiosexual. And what that means is you're turned on by brains.
Yeah, well.
Homo sapiens. Okay, a sapiosexual. And yeah, so there you have it. I just wanted to say that now somebody asked me, I'm going to say I'm a sapiosexual. Or sapio, or whatever the hell it is. And it doesn't prevent you from also identifying as, you know, a million other things. You could be a gay sapiosexual. You could be a trans sapiosexual, straight, cis, but it just gives you a little more oomph, you know?
Yeah, it's a condiment.
It's a condiment? So,
a little spice.
But really, I love the idea. So I'm just saying, intelligence doesn't necessarily mean being highly educated, says one of the people who identifies. It says it means, to me, she says it means I'm attracted to people with emotional intelligence and with humor intelligence. And so, okay, so they're saying that I don't care what you look like. I just love your head, right? That's a sapiosexual.
Yeah. Well,
I'm going to take that one. I'm going to take that one because I've been feeling like really left out as cis and white. Because it's... Huh? And hetero. Oh, well, I thought cis meant hetero. Oh,
no,
God.
It just means...
What?
This just means that you
identify with...
that you accept the way you were brought in. I mean, that's how
what's
you
on my
identify.
birth certificate. I agree with it.
Right.
So I'm a hetero, cis, everything that's not in. So, since I can't change being white, I can just add sapiosexual. So, I'm a little more interesting now, don't you think?
Well, you're a purebred Ashkenazi Jew.
That's true. We did our genetics testing, and man, we came back so pure Jew. It's amazing. Totally. You know, Susan, I was thinking we should do a coat of arms because it could be, you know, like King David was our...
Yeah.
Or Solomon.
Well, we don't know about that unless our brother does it, because he's the only one that carries the male
Well, then we got to get him to do it and see how far back we go there.
We got to get him to do it.
We go way, 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 way. I mean, like generations. And what they say, one of our grandparents clearly was 100% Ashkenazi Jew, which is a hard thing to be. Nobody raped anybody.
Yeah, we had less than 1% of various and sundry little things thrown in, but to come out after hundreds of thousands of years, 94.7 or 95.7% Ashkenazi Jew.
Pretty amazing. And for those wondering, Ashkenazi, there are two sort of things of Judaism. It's all the same to me. Sephardic Jews, maybe Spanish Jews, and then the Eastern European Jews, the ones that pretty much were wiped out by the Holocaust. That's what we are, Ashkenazi Jews. So we got John in Greensburg on the line. Hello, John.
Hello. Well, thank you for taking my call. Lynn and Susan. Though I hate to break it to Susan, it really hasn't been hundreds of thousands of years because Judaism hasn't quite existed that long. But regardless, not really what I called to comment about. I was actually...
let's just say the strain that became Ashkenazi Jew goes all the way back.
Yeah, like to the Garden of Eden. To the Garden of Eden. That was us.
The Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
Where in the Middle East there was an apple tree. But regardless. By the way, before I get to my topic, I was listening to the show a couple of weeks ago, and I heard Lynn describe a experience she had in college where her roommate was expecting a Jewish person to have horns. Do you know where that dates back to?
No, that was not college, by the way. I was still in high school, and it would happen in Green Bay at a musical theater production.
When I heard that, I actually researched it,
and
it actually stems from a passage in the Bible which described how Moses, when he was returning from the mount with the tablets, was described as having either horns of light, depending on one translation, meaning a halo, or the horns of a ram, which was an animal that was used as a sacrifice and offered up to Yahweh. So it was actually meant to be an indication Moses was divine.
Mm-hmm.
And when Michelangelo crafted the statue of Moses, he of course
gave him horns.
Correct. Yes.
Well.
But anyway, I just felt like I had to throw that in because it just sparked a little bit of research, thinking, how the hell did that particular, bit of racial stereotyping ever come about? But
there it is.
I actually called because of the discussion yesterday, and then also Susan's comment about how people in coal mining will refuse to admit that coal mining is a dying industry.
Mm-hmm.
And the discussion Lynn was having yesterday with just exploring how certain people have adopted a mindset where they will just adamantly refuse to even recognize they may be incorrect about facts because they somehow take it as a personal attack, that it's some sort of denigration of them.
Right. You calling me stupid? You calling me stupid? Right. That's if that's right. That's what it is. It's an immediate defensive reaction that you're calling them stupid.
And of course, no human being, all human beings, I mean, particularly once we're adults and and even middle-aged adults, it's discomforting to have one's worldview upended. But at the same time, if one simply just refuses, is willing to and is outright hostile to one being criticized for a lack of knowledge or having incorrect knowledge, or even unwilling to consider that one might be wrong and learn something new, that's just blatant irrationality. And I was having this discussion about coal mining and coal jobs on the forum the other day, and which I don't participate in much anymore. I just find it to be almost a waste of time because of the attitude you described and you explored yesterday. And we were having, I was having kind of this civil back and forth with a person and just pointing out the facts that the coal mining industry has been declining for 100 years. I mean, it's a tiny sliver of the American workforce now,
right?
Except in a few isolated pockets. I mean, the USA and the world now depends more on renewables, namely wind and solar and even nuclear than they do on coal. And the coal isn't being killed by, environmental regulations. It's being wiped out because it's not economical anymore. It's just not compared to natural gas.
Do you know the state of West Virginia? The state government of West Virginia is not building anymore. I mean, there are no coal-fired plants happening in that state. Because nobody in their right mind would build one.
And when I started, I just did some links pointing that very, very tidbit of information out. Yeah, and suddenly the person I was conversing with and having a reasonably civil dialogue with, just started throwing this tantrum, ranting about how coal was being killed off by, these rich liberal elites in their college towns, driving around in their big cars, their Volvos and their limousines, and they thought saving the earth and protecting endangered species were more important than the people who lived in those dying towns who struggled to provide the energy that, I'm like, man, where's that coming from? I'm pointing out, I'm just giving you actual facts and figures.
Well, it's coming from grief of what was known and being gone or disappearing on them. It comes from anger at that. It comes from fear that the way of life that they and their people have known seems to be disappearing. I mean, that's really what it's all about, right? It's a very human kind of reaction, but it's playing out in a way that is endangering. I mean, if the election of Donald Trump is what, Susan?
I really think that there could be another way to look at this, and much in the same way that there is a phenomenon that we know to be true called body dysmorphia, where no matter what you look like, you look in the mirror and see disfigurement.
Right.
I would think that there has to be something akin to that in people's brains that simply will not allow the accepting of a contrary view. In that it is simply on the most basic of levels, rejected, much the same way that a person who looks in the mirror, sees ugly when they're looking at beauty.
That's a good analogy.
I understand. Yeah, that actually is an excellent analogy.
Yeah.
I think you might actually want to develop that idea and publish it. I tend to wonder how much has been inculcated through a very wide-reaching and effective right-wing, propaganda machine.
Well, we know brainwashing works.
Yeah,
right.
Tell people. And also, of course, I understand being reflexively dismissive of an idea if it threatens one's livelihood. Let's face it. I mean, the idea that coal is a very toxic, polluting industry does affect the livelihood of these tiny coal towns that for generations depended upon that industry, despite all the adverse health effects and the brutal nature of the work, for the men, and they were almost exclusively men, to make decent livings and provide for their families. But at a certain point, one has to face reality as it is.
Well, it's like, it's not unlike what we witnessed here in Pittsburgh, for God's sake. Pittsburgh had to look. I mean, I watched the diaspora.
Had to remake itself.
Tens of thousands of people leaving everything they had known because it wasn't viable any longer. So
Right.
They've got to realize, Pittsburgh didn't just sit around saying, yeah, bring steel back, although it was Trump who came here and said he'd bring steel back, didn't he? No, you move on. You move on. You accept reality.
And that's what I was trying to, my like rebuttal to this person, and I tried to couch it very diplomatically, because I could see he was getting angry on the other side of the keyboard, was that, look, you've described how widespread economic misery in these towns because apparently he grew up very much in that area.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you've described this and how the education system is failing and there's widespread health problems and how, opioid and meth addiction is, it's just pervasive. I said, but what you're telling me is that the best solution going forward is to try to keep clinging to this industry that's clearly not doing anyone any good anymore.
Right.
Where I was trying to tell him, look, the way to make that area great, make Appalachia great again, or make America great again, pour federal dollars into the same kind of program that gave us the interstate highway system, or the Tennessee Valley Authority, way back in the day when America did do great things.
Well, somebody said, we should have a Marshall Plan for rebuilding these areas, what we did to Europe after World War II. But that ain't going to happen because we're not into doing that kind of stuff. We're not into government moving in and taking care of people and helping them up.
To privatize it.
Right, we'll privatize everything.
All that.
Hey, guys, I have another. I'm sorry, but I have another caller who's been waiting for a long time, so I'd like to move on.
Absolutely.
But John, thank you.
Good day.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Good day, Susan, Lynn.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, and now we got Joe.
Yep, and I'm calling from yesterday to correct your radio voice, Dave. There's scientists, there's geologists, anthropologists, geologists, all type of scientific researchers on that show. I'm not saying I believe it lock, stock, and barrel. 50% it is opinion, educated opinion. But they are experts in the field of different things. So for him to say the show's not based on science, he's full of shit. That's one thing. And another thing, he said it's purely entertainment value. TV's entertainment, unless he's so wonderful that he listens to programs that are so educational. That's another thing. And I don't usually cut on other callers, but I get tired of people calling back and making snarly remarks every time I say something. I'm not crazy. I just said keep an open mind about science and different things that people have in different shows. I didn't say I believe it lock, stock, and barrel. And that's all I got to say. You know what? I'm done calling your fucking show. I'm sick of the snarly remarks from the other assholes all the time. I never say nothing about them. They can kiss my fucking ass. Goodbye.
Well, I'm glad we took that one.
Susan, you're not aware of what we
are now snarkily laughing. So try and suppress it.
Right? No, I'm not.
And have a fucking good day yourself. God.
Well,
he's been mad for 24 hours. He was up all night.
Yeah, I knew he'd be upset. He was. He had a call yesterday in which he was saying that he gets a lot of information from this show, what is it?
Ancient Aliens.
So Susan always knows. Do you watch it, Susan?
Never seen it.
Oh, but you know of the show. Anyway,
I happened to catch his call yesterday.
Oh, you did. You caught the call. Okay. So and I'm sorry. Whatever. I'm sorry. I never anyone to
I prefer
feel
that all the people that are eating up all of the crap that Trump and his ilk are feeding. I preferred this guy and his admonition to keep an open mind about the beginnings of Earth and how this has all happened. I would prefer to be hanging out with him than these guys that, as we were just discussing, are just sure that the only thing that's keeping coal from coming back is Democratic liberals.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, and I'm sorry. I don't like people to be hurt like that on the show.
No.
However, who is this? Milton? Is that Milton who just sent me this? This is from Smithsonian Magazine. Can we all agree that that's a pretty legitimate scientific organ?
That's a pretty good scientific journal, yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to read a little bit of this, and I don't know that, I suppose Joe's not listening still, but until now, this article says, I have assiduously avoided ancient aliens. I had a feeling that if I watched the show, which popularizes far-fetched, evidence-free idiocy about how human history has been molded by extraterrestrial visitors, my brain would jostle its way out of my skull and stalk the earth in search of a kinder host. Or at the very... Okay, so we get the... But then I heard the History Channel's slurry of pseudoscience had taken on dinosaurs. Yeah, it's not just... some of this stuff that is on there, they put on a great show. I mean, it's fascinating stuff, right? It's just incorrect.
Well, you can watch hours of ghost hunters on television.
Well, right.
Days,
and this guy says, I'm actually glad that my editors don't allow me to cuss on this blog. If they did, my entire review would be little more than a string of expletives. This guy just there was so much wrong with ancient aliens that I could spend all week trying to counteract every incorrect assertion. This is a common technique among self-appointed challengers of science. It's called Gish Gallop, after a young Earth creationist, Dwayne Gish. When giving public presentations about evolution and creationism, Gish rapidly spouts off a series of misinterpretations and falsehoods to bury his opponent under an avalanche of fiction and distortion. If Gish's opponents try to dig themselves out, they would never be able to make enough progress to free themselves to take him on directly. Ancient Aliens uses the same tactic. The fiction comes fast and furious. He goes on to take up very specific things. People, I don't know. People believe what they want to believe in large part, and
yeah, and they can put anybody up on that show and say that they're a scientist and a graduate of blah blah blah, and create credentials anywhere they want, and I can guarantee you, no one's taking the time to jot down their names and to verify.
Here he says there were a few real scientists on the program. Paleontologists, and he names some names, make appearances throughout the show. I can't help but feel bad for them and wonder whether scientists should simply boycott appearing on such programs. So they do get people who I guess are trying to set them straight, but in the editing room, I don't know. Anyway, this guy is a scientist. He goes on to say, Ancient Aliens is some of the most noxious sludge in television's bottomless chum bucket. Jeez. Actual experts are brought in to deliver sound bites that are then twisted and taken out of context, while fanatics are given free rein. Fiction is presented as fact, and real scientific research is so grossly misrepresented that I can only conclude that the program is actively lying to viewers. To present the show as a documentary on a nonfiction network is a loathsome move by the History Channel spinoff. Yeah, I don't know how they can call... Well, the History Channel puts a lot of crap out there, too. How can they do that? They mislead people left. They
are money-making machines. Come on. Anybody that thinks that because they're watching a channel called the History Channel,
well, you think
that everything they're watching
is history. Well, call me naive, but I sort of thought the History Channel was doing that, and then I happened to come upon a program which was full of this kind of craziness. I thought, you mean they can do that on the History Channel? Yeah, of course they can. Ancient Aliens and shows like it winnow away at actual scientific understanding by promoting absolute dreck. Ancient Aliens is worse than bad television. The program shows a sheer contempt for science and what we really know about nature. Okay, well, so there. That's from Milton. Thanks, Milton. Oh, dear.
Okay, so that's not snark. That's a rebuttal.
Yeah, and maybe, people have said goodbye before and come back. Huh? He did? Joe did it once before. He said goodbye once, yeah. But he did come back. I think this time might be. This one might be for good. Okay. So I have a little tidbit of information here.
Yes.
Lunch. Lunch is ending. I mean, people don't go out to lunch anymore. I just want to tell you. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. That's according to the restaurant industry. Americans.
That's too bad. And I have to say that's probably true because 20 years ago, I went out to lunch a lot. 10 years ago, I went out to lunch a lot. And not necessarily lunching with ladies. I would just take myself out to lunch with the book.
And you don't anymore?
And I don't do that here.
Why not?
And arguably, it's easier here. I can just walk out my front door and be within walking distance of any number of
nice
fine
restaurants.
little places to sit down.
Well, it says they have some possible. They say increasingly Americans are not eating out during the work day. They say that the restaurant biz sees a loss of over $3 billion in lost business, which is a significant blow. The Wall Street Journal says that cost is one factor. The price of a lunch has gone up, so people think, screw it, I'll get something from the vending machine or eat at home. And work habits. I think.
Pack a lunch.
Yeah, work habits. I think this is a big part of it. People don't see carving out an hour in their day to go sit someplace and eat. They just eat at their desk, right?
They'd rather work that hour and go home an hour earlier.
Right, and they see that hour as if you take an hour for lunch as like some kind of a luxury. Maybe you would on occasion do it, and then they end with a quote from somebody who says, "I see that lunch is sort of like a remnant of a different time. I put restaurant lunches right up there with fax machines and pay phones." So it's just disappearing because our lives and how we live them have changed. But that's a hit for restaurants that relied on, because I do lunch, and I find I'll do what you used to do. I'll go take my papers and sit somewhere
and read and enjoy a nice lunch.
and
I do
enjoy
it every
a nice
once
lunch.
In a while, but I used to do it.
But there's no one else there. Yeah, there's very few people at these restaurants when I do that. Very few. And at some point, I would imagine restaurants are just going to close and just do a dinner business.
Well, and then think about where a lot of these restaurants are in suburban areas. They're in malls, and they relied on foot traffic, which simply doesn't exist because
malls are dying. Malls are dying, right?
And then I'd throw in the fitness kick, which is that people don't necessarily want to eat restaurant food because it's not always very good for you. It's too high in salt or it's too high in this, and people are thinking, no, I'd like to be in control of what I'm eating, and I'll make myself food, and I'll take it to work with me. I mean, I don't think I think it's a combination of all of those sorts of things that Americans view what they put in their bodies a whole lot differently now than they did even 10 years ago.
I guess. No, I'm just more aware that what I'm craving and putting in my body isn't good for me, but I still put it in my body, so now I just get less pleasure. I want to thank everybody for doing that to me. I will leave you with one other quote. And this goes out to Donald.
About what I found the most interesting yesterday.
What? What?
Well, because I discovered a fact that I never knew before, and I mean totally didn't know before, and I'm just amazed.
Which is what?
Which is that Oregon, when it was when it became a state, did not allow
black people to live there.
In there.
Oregon was like the most racist. When you think of racism, state-sanctioned racism, you're thinking, below the Mason-Dixon line there. Oregon.
No, it was Oregon.
Gee, I read that too, and I was stunned.
I was just amazed. I didn't know any of this. But it puts what happened on that train in Portland.
Yeah, there's a real strong
sort of context.
Racist element in Oregon that's been there since the beginning and's been state-sponsored. Right. So while you have Portland, this liberal, diverse city, that ain't all. There's a whole other state surrounding that, which is historically incredibly racist. Yeah, I saw that too. Yep. So, okay, and this goes out, my last quote goes out to Donald Trump, and this is from G.K. Chesterton, long gone, a Brit. How much larger your life would be if yourself could be smaller in it. How much larger your life could be if yourself could be smaller in it. That goes out to you, Donald.
Narcissism.
Yeah. Suze, thanks. And thanks for that brilliant idea you had about the body dysmorphia, because I think that was brilliant. Brilliant!
I finally rose above bullshit to brilliance. Thank you, Lynn.
Well, you're still bullshit, but that is brilliant. You're a brilliant bullshitter. A bullshitting brilliant. We're out of time. I gotta go. Goodbye. See you guys tomorrow.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of the Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.